I owe everybody an apology. I thought the practice was really clear. I thought I communicated it rather clearly. But I understand now that if we speak linearly, then people think practice is linear. So I say something is a sentence that is sequentially spoken for people to understand. However, I have spoken about that a moment is past, present, future, that time is simultaneous, but somehow those are all concepts, nice ideas, not reality. And when I say practice is literal, I mean that. But somehow it didn't get through. I said over the last few weeks, it is not the moments you feel, but the moments you don't let yourself feel that ruin your life. And people who would listen to that would say, but I practice. I practice be with my experience, let whatever comes up come up from that experience, and I function appropriately on the physical plane. However, the belief is it's sequential, which then means there have to be moments then where I am unwilling to feel. So if you are figuring out how to act appropriately, then you are not being with your experience. Nothing will ever change because you are using your system to discern right action. Your action then is based on your shrunken understanding. So you're being with your experience, whatever it is, letting whatever comes up come up, and then you leave that to figure out how to act appropriately. No. 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 There aren't enough no's. In order to function appropriately, you have to never leave your experience. It's a simultaneous practice. Simultaneously, be with your experience, whatever it is. Let whatever comes up from that experience come up. And from there arises the appropriate action. The practice is not a discrete problem-solving tool. The practice is a way of being all the time. Consciousness does not move back and forth. We stay grounded first with our experience, in our experience, all the time, grounded in it. From there arises all those wonderful thoughts that we all have from those experiences. And staying with and being with our experience, right action arises. The whole purpose of the practice is to move us toward who we truly are, so that at some point we are actually living Sahaj Samadhi, walking bliss, being in the heart, and looking out from there at the world. Being with our experience, whatever it is, letting whatever comes up from that experience come up, and functioning appropriately on the physical plane from there purifies the vehicles. The vehicles such as the psychic instrument, the intellect, the data collector, and the identifier, ego. And what does that mean? It means that we then no longer identify with the intellect or the intel that comes from that intellect as who we are. So we stop figuring it out, because we all know how smart we are and how smart our intellect is, because that's who we are. And lo and behold, if we keep to that, identifying with the intellect and what it says, our lives never change. So once you practice the three simultaneously, the functioning appropriately arises from who we really are, clearly and cleanly through the vehicles. Evelyn Underhill speaks about this in her book, Mysticism, where she writes, "In idealism, we have perhaps the most sublime theory of being, which has ever been constructed by the human intellect. A theory so sublime, in fact, that it can hardly have been produced by the exercise of pure reason alone, but must be looked upon as a manifestation of that natural mysticism, that instinct for the absolute, which is latent in man. But when we ask the idealist how we are to attain communion with the reality which he describes to us as certainly there, his system suddenly breaks down and discloses itself as a diagram of the heavens, not a ladder to the stars. This failure of idealism to find in practice the reality of which it thinks so much is due, in the opinion of the mystics, to a cause which finds epigrammic expression in the celebrated phrase by which St. Jerome marked the distinction between religion and philosophy. Plato located the soul of man in the head. Christ located it in the heart. That is to say, idealism, though just in its premises and often daring and honest in their application, is stultified by the exclusive intellectualism of its own methods, by its fatal trust in the squirrel work of the industrious brain, instead of the piercing vision of the desirous heart. It interests man, but does not involve him in its processes, does not catch him up to the new and more real life which it describes. Hence, the thing that matters, the living thing, has somehow escaped it, and its observations bear the same relation to reality as the art of the anatomist does to the mystery of birth. We are not going for a bigger, better you. A purified system, intellect, is not you. You have to let go of you to get to you. So the only way, as we keep digging in, is to simultaneously be with our experience, whatever it is. Let whatever comes up from that experience come up, and function appropriately on the physical plane. Doing those three simultaneously creates an integrated existence. How to function appropriately will arise out of being with your experience and letting whatever comes up from that experience come up. It arises from within. It requires you to give up who you think you are, the doer. And if we go to the Shiva Sutras, which we have gone through, Shiva Sutra 3.10, we are the stage, not the actor. The inner soul constitutes the stage of the self that is the actor. This is from Jaidev Singh in its commentary. The place where the self, and when I say the self, I mean the self of all, takes delight with the intention of exhibiting the world drama is the Ranga, or the stage, the place where the self adopts the various roles. The inner soul of the subtle form that has a contracted manifestation, with the main constituent being either the void or prana. The word inner, jiva, is used relatively to the external body. Having planted his feet on that stage of the inner soul, this actor, the self of all, displays the world drama by means of the active movements of his inner sense. Entering into the subtle and moving about in all forms of existence, he, the self, is to be known as the inner soul, bound by the residual traces of good and evil deeds. So, the self of all involutes into, or some people will say evolves, but it goes into the inner soul, and the inner soul functions because of the self of all. We are so proud, and yet we are just the stage. The senses, Sutra 11, 311, the senses of the yogi are the spectators of his acting. And Jaidev Singh writes, the senses of the ordinary person are extroverted and drag down the person towards the pleasures of worldly objects. The senses of the accomplished yogi who has attained the highest state do not lead him into worldly pleasures. They have become introverted and present to the yogi only the glory, the beauty, and the delight of the cosmic actor. The senses of the yogi only reveal the inmost actor and no longer conceal him as they do in the case of the ordinary.